Mr. Kofi Ntim is the Vice President of the Actuarial Society of Ghana and will deliver the opening remark. But before that, please, let's be reminded that all the protocols we observed yesterday in respect of the receivers for the non-Anglophone speaking participants still is in force. So, Mr. Ntim, if you're here, we're ready to listen to you. A round of applause for him, please.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I do hope that you have learned a lot from the conference, and for visitors, I do hope you've learned a lot about Ghana. And I hope that when you go back to your various countries, you would have positive things about Ghana, and you wouldn't. One thing which the council would like to also apologize for is the fact that some of our programs haven't started on time. So this is just a one-off, and we do apologize for that. But I'm here to really talk about the reason why the program was we have been able to hold the program, and it's because of the help of some institutions and organizations that have actually helped us in putting together this two-day Congress. So I would like to mention a list. I have a list of companies that I would like to acknowledge for their help. And the list is Accurate, SIC Life, Star Life, United Actuaries and Consultants, NBC Trusts, Pergy Insights, GIA, Vodafone, Stallion Consultants, Zamara, Old Mutual, IO, Zoom Lion, Solveco, Continental Re, Ghana Insurance College, and Flana. I would also like the next companies and institutions that I'm going to mention, if a rep can give a message or use a minute to let us know about what the company does. So I'll start with if a rep of the company is available. QED. Is a rep from QED around? Okay. How about CAS? I see Yvonne. Yes, please come up. And because we are short on time, what I have arranged with Will Smith, that if you go above 1 minute, Will Smith will come up and then smack you. So please.
Morning, everybody. My name's Yvonne Palm. I'm a board member for the Casualty Actuarial Society, which is general insurance or property casualty insurance specialized actuarial society based in the US. We have about 9,000 members worldwide. 5% are based outside of North America, and about 12% of our exams are being taken outside of North America, which we're really excited about because it means we're expanding internationally. So I'm here, I'm based in Nigeria, and I'm a CAS board member. So Africa is definitely getting much more notice on the CAS stage, and we are very much looking forward to partnering with the actuarial associations around Africa. We're already speaking with many of you as well, but we're here to help. We're here to help develop the actuarial profession in Africa. I personally really want to do that as well, so please do reach out and we can have any conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Now we'll call on FIS to give a remark.
Perfect. Thanks, Kofi. I'm Keegan Patel, representing FIS Global, and we offer a solution called Profit, which is an actuarial risk modeling tool. And I'm going to stick to my minute, and I'll cover more about what Profit does in my session a bit later today. So looking forward to engaging and connecting again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. A rep from SNIT. Okay. ASA, South African Society of Actuary. SOA, IFOA,
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Irene Redmond, and I am head of New Markets Development for the Institute and the Faculty of Actuaries. We have members throughout probably 30 countries in Africa, and we work very closely with the local associations because we think it's very important that the local associations prosper and support their members as they are on the ground. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully I've kept within my time.
then Deloitte. Okay, all right, that's my list. But we would want to, the next section, we would want to acknowledge some of the past ASG, past people who have helped the establishment and growth of ASG. So we would call on the current ASG president to come up and do the acknowledgement. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't want to come up this morning, but I have to. The ASG was founded in 1996 by a few young, enterprising people who were working in various establishments, but most of them were from SNIT. I would have shown their pictures at that time, but because you see them differently, I didn't want to bring their images. And we had so far 6 presidents. The first president has passed on, by name Eric Ni Ajay. He actually mooted the idea of the ASG together with Mr. Kwesi Osei, who became the second president. He was the vice and then became the second. Yesterday, we had the privilege of having the presence of the vice. He was here, but we couldn't acknowledge him. By name Peter Osei-Dua. They were the first consultants in actuary in Ghana, and we are privileged to have had them at that time because they inspired us, they took us on, and today here we are. Third was by Dr. Frank Odum. He was also here yesterday. We had wanted to show their photos. We have a couple of how can I put them? People who, the diasporans who, or we call them the actuarial returnees. We have one amongst us now, which I would like to acknowledge. Stallion, CEO. Shall we have you? Osei Akoto is one of our sponsors. He's been supporting us a lot in terms of funding, and we appreciate that. Then we had the 4th president by name Mr. Amate Vondi, Ernest. Yes, that's Dr. Odum. Yesterday he was here. He was the 3rd president, and his vice was Mr. Ernest Amate Vondi. After his tenure, we had Vondi taking over as the president, and his vice was Steve Yeboah. They were all here yesterday. After Ernest Vondi came Stephen as the president. And fortunately, I was the vice. And currently, the president. We want to, yes, that's Stephen at the IA conference representing us. And so these people have done so much for the profession in Ghana. They are the, what we call them, blazers. We had followed their path and we want to appreciate them. Shall we give them a round of applause? Having done that, I think, yes. So yesterday we missed out on the National Insurance Commissioner. He's away outside the country, but he had a representative. And if he's here, can we invite him to speak, give us a remarks? He's by name Denchi.
Yes, please.
Mr. Denchi. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Good morning to all of you, and good morning to the President and the members gathered here. I bring you greetings from the Commissioner of Insurance, Dr. Justice Yaofori. He was supposed to have been part of this session, but one way or the other, there are other engagements that has taken him away from the office today. And I'm here to commend you for the sessions that you are having, and to also let you know that the work of the actuary in the insurance industry is very, very important and dear to the Commission for both life and non-life, for product development, assessment of products, ratings, and the like. The actuaries are being of much importance to both the Commission and to the various insurance companies. It has been the main focus of the National Insurance Commission to make it mandatory that even students who come out of school have some sort of attachment with the insurance company, so as to be able to develop their skills in the areas that they are able to help the industry growth. And we will appreciate the Actuarial Society of Ghana also to be interested in us in most of your workshops that you have, so that we from the National Insurance Commission and also the insurance industry can participate to help develop the skills of the actuaries, since their work is of much importance to the industry. On this note, I want to thank you very much for this section, and we pray for God guidance and protection in everything that we do. Thank you very much.
We also missed out on President of CII Ghana yesterday, so if Mr. Ben Ahmed is around. Okay, all right, so housekeeping is done. Thank you for your time.
Indeed, the work of the forebears of the ASJ cannot be deleted from both oral and written history, and I am glad that the current president found it important to acknowledge the contributions of these personalities to the current state of ASJ. And together we say Ayiko to all of them. Today's program is in two parts. The first will be a series of presentations and parallel sessions which will end at approximately 3:15 p.m. And that will be interspersed with lunch and coffee breaks. This year, the organizers of the conference have found it necessary to add a special award and recognition night, which will climax the conference starting at 4 p.m. So we all have to be very, very, very conscious of time and try to manage time today. And therefore, respectfully, I urge all presenters to abide and work within the allotted time. without taking my time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have our first plenary session on the topic Health Insurance Schemes in Africa, Addressing Technical Challenges and Sustainability Issues. And the participants are Mazimba Marivera from Insight Actuaries, Wise Chigudu from EY Nigeria, Kamal Zeroki from Algeria, Samuel Nunu, Freelance Actuaries and Analytics. Please, if they are here, it's time for them. Showtime.
Hi, everyone. Hope you had a good rest. Well, welcome to the section, Health Insurance Schemes in Africa, Addressing Technical Challenges and Sustainability. I will act as the coordinator, so these are really the resource persons. Kamal, who is the third person on the list from Algeria, couldn't make it, so but we have enough resource material here, so we should be in good hands. We are all aware that this is a very vital topic because health and wellness and by extension health insurance schemes are very vital to the development of any nation. I mean, the productivity thereof, and the quality of life. So the list goes on and on. So our first speaker will be, but before then, just the usual housekeeping rules. We want them to do the presentation. And so if you have a question, just jot it down, or you have a comment. Once they are done, please feel free to chip in and bring your contribution. So I want to welcome Wise, and forgive me for my pronunciation, Chigudu.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here. I represent Ernst & Young EY, West Africa. I'm a partner in the insurance and actuarial lead in the insurance practice at EY. I'm just going to ask for my slides to go up. While my slides are, these are Masimba slides. Maybe we could swap actually, and we can start. Yeah.
So if you could just go back to the first slide, I think it's quite important for the context. So my name is Masimba Marivera. I'm a healthcare actuary by profession. What's a little bit nervous about today is Roseanne Harris lectured me healthcare, so it feels weird that I'm standing here giving the lecture. It's probably the first time that's happened. But I guess really my reflections today really are just to paint a picture about South Africa. And I guess the vantage point I have is I was born in Zimbabwe, but I live in South Africa. So coming in from the outside without any preconceived notions about my experience with it. And I guess really it's quite apt that the title is When Two Worlds Collide, because I think that's very important context to understand healthcare in South Africa. Next slide. So I guess really where it started, 94. And I think the health insurance in South Africa, fortunately, just because of the age of the democracy, is not too far back. So actually quite a lot of actuaries contributed to this. For example, Prof. McLeod is actually an actuary by profession. So the actuarial profession has been very involved in it. And I guess when the country came out of apartheid, the plan was quite simple. Compulsory membership for those who could afford. You had to, and the medical schemes would form the basis, and it was a progressive realization of what most people call national health insurance. But it was basically getting to universal healthcare coverage slowly over time, making sure that it's based on social solidarity. But because you can't underwrite, it means that you need compulsion. Now, what's happened since then? So this was 1994. I think it's quite important to talk about what the current state of the market is, so that you get a sense of some of the challenges South Africa has experienced. So currently at the moment, South Africa's healthcare market is split into two. we've got a public and a private sector. I guess I'll touch on some of the most important aspects of the two. In the private sector, you have a market which is based on social solidarity. So it's not health insurance in the typical way. So if you've had the opportunity to read a paper by David Wilkie called Mutuality and Solidarity, it explains very well the differences between the two. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, the Medical Schemes Act in South Africa is social solidarity. You have very limited underwriting, you have guaranteed acceptance, and you have community-rated premiums or contributions. Now, that means is that from an insurance perspective, unless there's compulsion, the ability to be selected against is quite high. Now, one of the mechanisms that was built to get around this was risk equalization. Unfortunately, that hasn't been implemented. So what ends up happening is that you have a market that is partly regulated and partly isn't, and is suboptimal. Quite important in terms of the context is that they are prescribed minimum benefits. Now, what those are is it puts a floor on what the price is, because in order to provide medical scheme coverage, you must provide those benefits. And just to put, I mean, this is quite an important number for context. For an individual person, that number is plus minus $70 US a month.
Progress.
Right? So without any other adjustments for anything else, just pure claims, per person covered, the minimum cost of cover is about $70 US. Now, if you go to the other side, which is the public sector, so the way structurally, I guess it's structured is that each of the provincial, so South Africa is made up of a number of provinces. The National Department of Health gets a grant from Treasury, and then they distribute it, so it's based on a per capita, but then there are some adjustments there for population size, for demand, I mean the usual kind of factors you'd expect. And in terms of just something quite important about how the public sector works, that technically there are user fees, so there's a means test. It's applied sometimes, it isn't applied sometimes. I'm sure those who live in South Africa can attest to that. Depending on which day and which hospital you walk into, some days you're asked to pay and some days you aren't. Now, so just go to the next slide. Now, I guess something that needs to be said, goes without saying, is that what determines participation between the two? I'm sure this is the true in all of our countries. It's simply income. I mean, who participates on private insurance and whom doesn't is income. I think the only exception really is Nigeria, because you've got a segment really at the top of the market that choose to not insure and can afford and choose to self-insure. But in almost everywhere else on the continent, income is the biggest determinant of your private insurance market. So what I've got on the graph here is a graph showing the percentage of people, so the red line, of the percentage of people who make up the medical scheme population, and then the other one is showing you income and what percentage of the overall population. So if, to give an example, if you look at right at the end there, so you have people earning above, let's call that $50,000 a year, so that's 800,000 Rand. They make up roughly 5% of the population, but they're responsible for 36% of the membership in medical schemes. So if you just think about, you know, in the context of the whole country, just how disproportionate that is. And interestingly, 5,000 Rand roughly per month is roughly how much, if you make above that, you are definitely in the top 50 earners. So keep in mind that, let's call it 1,000 Rand, $70. So basically, in order for one person, if you're in the top 50%, if you take that bottom number of 5,000 Rand, let's call that in dollars, $330. Okay? $330, if you earn above that in a household, that puts in the top 50%. But the minimum cost to participate in a scheme before administration, before brokerage fees, is 70. Okay, now you don't just participate by yourself, there's you, there's your kids. So there's a clear threshold issue here that by having these minimum benefits, it does have challenges. But I guess something quite interesting to talk about on the other side is that minimum benefits do offer the consumer some level of protection. So there is a level of balance you need to get between the two. But clearly, given where the affordability within the country is, this is a challenge. Let's go to the next slide, please. And just to highlight some of the extent of the disparities between the two. So what I've got here at the bottom is the percentage of the population which is covered. So about 15% of the population is covered in private medical schemes. 85% is technically covered by the state. And even though you've got those splits, the total expenditure between the 15% and the 85% is basically the same. So if you had to take that pie and cut it in half, you're giving 1 to 15% and the same one to 85%. So in essence, people whom are privately covered consume 5 times more than the average person. And I mean, you can imagine, I mean, given the history of the country, this is a particular sore point. And obviously, in understanding, and I think it's quite important that we talk about where the country comes from to understand some of the nuances of these numbers. Now, if you think about this from a personal level, and I guess what makes health insurance quite difficult is that it's a very personal experience. You know, like if something happens to your car, you know, you could submit next week. But with healthcare, it's quite personal and it's urgent. And what do people do whom are on this side? Because it's purely an income thing. If you're on this side, what happens? Because you've got significantly less resources, less access, and just go to the next slide. What we've seen happen is, so let's say, who uses private healthcare providers? Okay? So the first 15% is medical scheme, as you'd expect. But if you look above that, is that there is an equal number of people whom are privately insured, whose first port of call is not to go to the state hospital, which they have access to, in most instances for free, but rather to go to a private doctor. So there's an insurance need there that's not being captured. Because if that's your first point of call, there should be an insurance solution. But unfortunately, there isn't because the way regulation is set up. And then if you go further, there's up to half the country almost who uses private providers. So there's clearly an issue here between the quality that they're receiving and access, and something needs to balance. Because, you know, when you see this level of chosen out-of-pocket payments, when someone has technically free cover, there's something suboptimal happening in the market. I mean, I won't go into an issue, but in South Africa, this is a current bone of contention about these people between, let's just say, there's 30% of the population there where there's a clear insurance need, and it needs to be met somehow, because, you know, you can't have these two extremes. Either you can afford over $70 or you can't, and there's no in between. Just go to the next slide. So where to from here? And I think really the healthcare, unlike most things, is quite a high political priority, and there were winds of change. And it's quite important when the plan started was that the plan was that you have medical schemes and there's a progressive realization, but very importantly that you have more than one payer. So the key difference, and I guess this is a fundamental difference between the two. When the plan started in 94, the idea was that you have more than one payer and you are progressively realizing it, and you're gradually expanding the coverage as affordability increases. And in 2007, this is a quote from 2009, is that we got to the point where it was decided that we were going to have a single payer fund. Now, the challenges that comes with is that there's a number of things. You know, between 94 and now, a lot's happened. Some people have cover, some people don't. As the entire market has grown for 25 years. And I think maybe what I'll just do is I'll just explain a little bit of just what the NHI plan is now going forward, and then I'll close off with some thoughts. Just go to the next slide. So, some of the good aspects, there's mandatory, it's mandatory for everyone. So if you're going to have any kind of a social health insurance or anything that's not based on pure insurance principles, you must have the ability to mandate cover, otherwise there's selection. Because it's a single payer, there's no need for risk equalization because you're all in the same fund. The purchase of provider split is a really good idea because it does give you some governance and separation. So for example, Rwanda has got a similar structure where you've got a separation between the two. In terms of the purchasing, they'll purchase from public and private. And the dynamics of how that happens, there's no detail on that, but that is the idea. There'll be an office set up to measure facilities. And in terms of the funding, I mean, there's all of the usual sources you'd expect, some kind of a tax, but I guess the real issue is, in order to afford NHI, I mean, let's think about it. That first slide I showed, let's call it 500 billion rand, 33 billion US dollars. Clearly, it's not sufficient now. Maybe the sharing between the two is not right, and we all agree. But clearly, $33 billion doesn't cover the health needs. So if we need more, where does it come from? increased taxation is the only solution. And given where the fiscus is at the moment, how practical is that? Let's go to the next slide. The benefit package isn't defined, but I think one of the most telling things about the NHI bill which was passed, and I think this has been quite a bone of contention, is there are mandatory referral pathways. Now, what the bill does say is that if you don't adhere to those pathways, claims won't be paid. Now, I guess I don't want to get into the politics, but I'll speak about it at a personal level. I've never given birth, but I'm sure if I ask my wife to change her gynae for the third baby after she's had one with the first two, you can imagine the human dynamic. There's some personal challenges here. You're a diabetic, you're 66 years old, you've had the same doctor for the past 30 years. Someone comes and says, not that doctor, that doctor. So what happens to people's health in that time? And I think it's quite important to say there's been a market that's progressed since that time period. The implementation, so it's going to be incremental, as with anything, economic growth is key. And I guess the last one is actually it's quite difficult to cost because the benefit package hasn't been designed and the time period hasn't been defined as well. Just go to the next one. Where we are now, I won't go too deep into this, but there's a bill that's in front of Parliament. There was public consultation, there's feedback provided, there was actually lots of engagement. In principle, everyone agrees this is the way to go. The difficulties, the devil's always in the detail. Do we include this? Is it multi-pair? Is it one pair? Can I see the doctor I choose? How we differentiate? How the quality? How do you make sure the quality is sufficient? What happens in the bridging years? All of those tough questions need to be asked. And I think, just go to my last slide, really. I think in conclusion, the real question in Africa about universal health coverage is, I'm sure this is a picture some of us have seen before, is that South Africa is very strange in just how unequal society is in lots of aspects. And the real question for me is, how do you bring these two together? I'm not a politician, but I think just even as a numbers person, there are some challenges, because how do you create insurance that covers for everyone here? And if you're going to create a solution, inequality is not what we want to perpetuate in society. What we want is equality. And how do we marry these two when even in other spheres of life we are struggling to do this? And I guess really my last remark is, fortunately with some of the work that I do is I've been able to see health insurance schemes in other countries. And the one thing that has struck me above anything else is that it's more the politics than anything else. The actual numbers, we are actuarial people, when I get the numbers spot on. But the difference between people who've been able to execute it and those who haven't is simply with the politics right. Because if the politics are right, you've got the willpower, you've got the desire to make it happen. And I think our challenges in South Africa may be an indication of where we are politically. Thank you.
Take two. So thank you very much. That was really a very good presentation on Southern Africa. I'm going to be looking at the West African market, and my focus is going to be on Nigeria and Ghana, and there will be some very interesting themes that are similar. Well, I'm just waiting for my presentation to go up.
In Ghana now. Graduates. I'm now in Ghana. Yes, I'm now in Talik,
There's been a bit of a hitch. They can't locate my slides, so maybe I'll try to send them again in the meantime, and you could ask some questions.
Yeah.
I think that's the right thing.
Yeah, whilst they look for our slides, hopefully they find it soon. I guess if you have questions specifically for from Azimba, I think we'll be ready to take it before they come in, and then we'll break in once they find the slides. One of the things personally I find remarkable is the political risk that he talked about. And I think as people who help design these schemes, one of the things we don't consider, or because we are so bent on the numbers, is that we don't consider the economic risk. I happen to be listening to a YouTube video from one Sylvester Mensah, one of the CEO of the National Health Insurance Scheme when it started. And it was surprising that some of the things you raised are the main issue. Promises are made, 95% benefits will be covered, and when the monies are due for providers, it's another matter, because there are serious political risks. So please feel free, chip in your experiences, and if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. My question is regarding the quality of healthcare, and also being in South Africa, speaking to the healthcare providers, how they are not really behind this and saying that they are leaving the country, they're not sticking around for it. What is your comment on that? Thank you.
So I think that's a very good question. The tough part is that, let's start with the quality question. It's very difficult to get the same level of quality for half the money on 85% as you do on the 15%. So to give an example, 70% of the healthcare providers in South Africa work in the private sector. So that's another nuance, because that 225 and those two numbers I showed you, there's another nuance in terms of the split. And I think some of the acknowledgement in the NHI bill is that the quality in the public sector has to improve, because you've got really good pockets in the public sector, but it's not standard across. And because healthcare is local, is in Johannesburg, you'll have very good supply of healthcare providers. You drive 300 kilometers up the road to Polokwane, and it's like half. So some of those challenges are a real concern. I think for me, the most difficult part about some of the handling of NHI stuff is there's no certainty being given to the actual core of the health system. The core of the healthcare system is and the provider. And there's lots of discussions about everything else. And I mean, imagine you're a professional. Someone says, maybe in 6 years, maybe in 10, maybe in 15, there'll be no insurance companies. As an actuarial professional, I think the human instinct is that you'd consider your options. And I think as the consumer in the system for this, we're all